My name is Christine Thorne, and I'm here today to talk to you about what is better to put in your body, willow bark or aspirin. And to understand this, we need to talk about the compounds that are in both of these. So in willow bark, there's salicin, and in aspirin, there's acetyl salicylic acid. And they both do very similar things for your body. When ingested, they help your body create salicylic acid, which acts as both an anti-inflammatory and a pain reliever. And a bit of a fun fact before we get down to it, the use of willow bark as a substitute for aspirin is so well known enough that I actually chose it for my project out of a novel I was reading. There was this fictional witch who knew the future, and she wrote a prophecy book. And she wrote, "There will be a man with bruises aching his head for willow fine." And really, he was asking for aspirin. So, thought that was kind of cool. So, now let's talk about the chemical names. Okay, I didn't even want to attempt to try to pronounce these names, so I wrote them down. The blue one is salicin, and if I tried to say it, it'd be 2-hydroxylmethylphenyl bd-glucosapyronoside, something like that. And then for the acetyl salicylic acid, 2-acetoxybenzoic acid is my attempt, but I probably didn't say them right, so here they are. And then we need to know a bit about our chemical formula, which they look like this, but I can also tell them to you. So the salicin there's 13 carbons. There's 18 hydrogens and there's 7 oxygens. And then for acetyl salicylic acid, what a tongue twister, there is 9 carbons, 8 hydrogens, and 4 oxygens. Okay, so now we'll look at the chemical structure of salicin, which I've drawn here. It's the black, lovely, and I'm just going to go through now and point out all the functional groups using my fun little colors. I've already set up a color code. So green for benzene, so bam, bam, bam. It's actually kind of like the whole thing. That's it for benzene. Blue is for our alcohols. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 alcohols. And then orange here for our ethers. So we have 1 here and 1 here. So that makes 2. And then our alkanes in pink, which over here.
I made a mistake. It's not a pentagram, it's a hexagon.
Or maybe excluding the ether. A bunch over here. Lovely. And some within. That looks terrible. Within the benzene ring. And then last but not least are alkenes, which is all the double bonds in the benzene ring, which has made it a huge mess over here. But those are our functional groups sort of pointed out. Okay, so now I'm sort of going to go through the same thing for the acetyl salicylic acid, which I've drawn here. Chemical structure, lovely. Now using my color coding skills, I will point out to you all the different functional groups. So benzene, and this time we have carboxylic acid over here, and we also have ester again, this time 1 of them, and our alkane, which we have 1 there, here, 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 and then there's more throughout, but I didn't circle all of them, I think. And then the alkene, which of course are double bonds. Bada bing, bada boom. There we go. Actually, wait a minute. Breaking news. This orange that I erased the circle from, because it's not an ester. I lied. I absolutely lied. It's not an ether. It's actually an ester. So I'm going to write that. Ester. And then this means this whole bad boy is an ester. Lovely. And now to sort of look at this stay at room temp. I wrote it down, not really for any reason, but salicin is a solid. It's a powder at room temperature. And acetylsalicylic acid is a white crystal at room temperature, which I think you can ground into a powder. Lovely, lovely, lovely stuff. And now we'll take a quick look at solubility. Wrote down again. So salicin dissolves at 40 milligrams per milliliter at 25 degrees in water. So we're going to go by 25 degrees in water. So the same for acetylsalicylic acid. It's 5.295 milligrams per milliliter in water at 25 degrees. So it's a quick look at our solubility. And then our melting points and boiling points are always super important. So I have those here. So for salicin, the melting point is 207 degrees Celsius and the boiling point is 549.09 degrees Celsius. And then for acetylsalicylic acid, it's 135 degrees Celsius for the melting point and the boiling point is 321.39 degrees Celsius. Just so we have those in the back of our. So now I'm going to talk a bit about the effects on your health. So to start off with, salicin is for the most part good for your health. It works as an anti-inflammatory and a pain reliever to treat headaches and joint pain, but it can also be good for other types of pain, such as menstrual cramps and arthritis. It's just a good general pain reliever, all-encompassing. But like all medicine, there are always potential side effects, such as upset stomach, nausea, ulcers, vomiting, and stomach bleeding. But salicin actually typically tends to be more gentler on your stomach than aspirin is. One of the more interesting parts about taking salicin is that you also gain benefits from other parts of the willow bark, like antiseptics, immune boosters, and fever relievers, since the bark is usually taken as a tea. But since it is taken as a tea, it does tend to take slower than aspirin to start working. So I'll now do a sort of the same breakdown for acetylsalicylic acid, but I will now refer to it as aspirin because that's too hard to say. So aspirin is for the most part good for your health. It also works as an anti-inflammatory and a pain reliever, but unlike salicin, it's also a blood thinner. It works for headaches, arthritis, minor aches, migraines, menstrual cramps, and fever. The special part of aspirin, though, is that it lowers risk of heart attack, strokes, and blood problems by preventing clots, but typically should only be taken to do so with a doctor's prescription, as it can be dangerous to take it daily without knowing the side effects. The side effects are actually mostly the same as aspirin: nausea, upset stomach, etc., but some of the more severe side effects are stomach bleeding, bleeding in the brain, and kidney failure. And it can also affect your liver long term. So now we're going to take a look outside of our own bodies and look at what these compounds are like for the environment. So salicin is not particularly dangerous to be released back into the environment, as plants actually produce salicin when stressed. So it's a natural thing, but releasing it back into the environment in large amounts could potentially mess up a delicate ecosystem. So caution still needs to be taken. And we should try to contain it by storing it in a cool, sealed container. The production of salicin also needs to be monitored, as we don't want to cut down too many willow trees, but this does not seem to be a problem that we are having at the moment. We just need to watch what we are doing with salicin. And as for aspirin, it's not good to release aspirin back into the environment, and it should be stored properly. Unfortunately, this is not enough, as about 30 to 90% of medicine taken goes back into the environment. Aspirin has been found in rivers and can get into fishes' systems and harm aquatic plants. Yet there isn't anything we can do about this until we get better water treatment centers. So at the moment, it's not up to us, really. So now we're going to sort of look at these medicines and these compounds from society's point of view. So salicin has less negative impacts on the body, so it can potentially be viewed as better for you. It's better for the liver and gentler on the stomach, and some people view natural medicine much better than pumping yourself full of drugs, which is true, but it's important to look at this case by case because sometimes the synthetic drug is stronger and better, but case by case always. So to lead into that and think about aspirin, aspirin is mostly known for its ability to prevent a heart attack, which is true. It can greatly lower the risk of a second heart attack after having one, but shouldn't be taken for no reason without being prescribed. So what that means is, yes, it can prevent a heart attack after you've already had one, but you shouldn't take it if you're not at risk for a heart attack and you've never had one and you've never talked to a doctor about it, because that can be dangerous. But taking too much aspirin isn't actually as dangerous as taking too much Tylenol, so maybe it's a little bit better if you take too much. And that makes it a bit more desirable for day-to-day pain, which I think is great. Aspirin can be an alternative to Tylenol and ibuprofen for some people, but the only downside is that aspirin tends to be harder on the stomach. But that's okay. Now, for an epic conclusion, what am I going to choose? Drum roll! It's a toss-up. I'm sorry, I can't just pick one. If I was having some minor pain or headache and I had access to willow bark to make willow bark tea, I would definitely choose that. It's gentle on the stomach and the liver. It's not harmful to get back into the environment. But sometimes you just need something stronger. And that's the case I would use aspirin because it works faster and it works for fever better than salicin. And from like a medicine standpoint, I would probably say we should stick to aspirin. But if you have minor pains and you have access to willow bark, definitely use that. And overall, both of these compounds work great. We have proven that, and I would definitely recommend both to anyone who needs it. Thank you for listening to my presentation, and have a great day.